Now let's try to identify some letters in a particular piece of Scripture. If you will turn in your Greek New Testament to the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 1. Now I know it may take you some time to find this in your Greek New Testament, so you may want to pause your tape at this time to give yourself the opportunity to look this passage up. John 1:1. Let's look at verse 1. The first letter is a capital epsilon. Notice that the breathing mark is in front of this capital letter. Breathing marks occur in Greek over the words that begin with vowels or diphthongs. And if that vowel is a capital vowel, then the breathing mark occurs right to the left of it. What is the letter after the capital epsilon? Nu. This word is pronounced N. N. If the breathing mark in front of the epsilon were facing the other way, we would pronounce this word hen, as though there were an H in front of it. But since it's not, we pronounce it N. The next word begins with what letter? Alpha. Ah. The next letter is Rho, an R sound. What is the next letter? Chi. And the final letter in the word is eta. Notice that underneath the eta there is a little iota. We call that an iota subscript. And since it's written below the letter eta, we do not pronounce the iota, but it is necessary to write it there. It shows us a particular ending of a word that tells us important information. Now let's look at this word and notice that since it begins with a vowel, there is a breathing mark over the alpha. That's called a smooth breathing mark. If you scan the line and find the fourth word that is one letter, an omicron, notice that the breathing mark goes the other way. That breathing mark is called a rough breathing mark, and we pronounce the word as though there were an H sound in front of it. But back to the second word, we have a smooth breathing mark. The accent is the curved, arched line over the eta on the end of the word. The only thing you need to know about accents at this point in Greek is that wherever the syllable is accented, you give the stress, voice intonation, to that particular syllable. We will learn more about accents as the course progresses, and especially where an accent changes the meaning of a word. So we will pronounce this second word arche. Arche. Now let's pronounce the two words together. In arche. And of course you know that means in the beginning. The word arche gives us such English words as arch, archetype, archives, archaeology, anything that is A-R-C-H. Now let's look at the third word. The first letter in the third word is what letter? Eta. And an eta would be transliterated into English as what English letter? A long E. So you would write an E and put a bar over top of the E to indicate that it's long. Notice that this word begins with a vowel, so we have a breathing mark, And what kind of breathing mark is this over the vowel? Smooth breathing. And there's also an accent. This curved accent is called a circumflex accent. What is the second letter or the last letter of this little word? Nu. So we would pronounce this word ein. Ein. It's a form of the verb of being, and it means it was. In the beginning was. Now look at the fourth word, the single letter omicron, with what kind of breathing mark over top? Rough breathing. So we pronounce this word ho, and it means the. It's a form of the definite article. Look at the last word before the comma. What's the first letter? Lambda. The next letter? Omicron. The next letter? Gamma. The next letter? Omicron. And the last letter? Sigma. You want to notice how a sigma is written differently when it occurs at the end of a word. It looks a lot like our English S. When it occurs any other place but the end of a word, it looks somewhat like an O with a cap drawn to the right top side of it. Look at the word logos, and you notice that over the first omicron in this word is a mark that we call an acute accent. So would we pronounce this word logos or logos? Logos, because the accent occurs over the first syllable. Now let's look past the comma, and we'll notice words that we have already seen. The first word, though, is the word that means and it begins with what initial letter? Kappa. The next letter is alpha. And the next letter? Iota. Now look at the accent over the iota. This is called a grave. Don't say grave, but rather grave accent. And we pronounce this word kai. Kai. The next two words, or the next three words actually, we have already seen in John 1:1. What is this word ho? It is a form of the definite article, meaning the. And what kind of breathing mark is over top of the omicron? A rough breathing mark. So we will pronounce this word ho. Ho. The next word is logos. Logos. And the next word is a form of our verb of being, ein, meaning it was. He, she, or it was. The word was. The next word begins with what letter? A P. And the next letter? Rho. The next letter? Omicron. And the letter at the end? Sigma. What kind of accent is over the omicron? A grave. And you don't want to say grave, do you? It's grave. A grave accent. We will pronounce this word pros. Pros. The next word is another form of the definite article. You'll discover that there are 24 different forms of the definite article in Greek. The first letter in this definite article is what letter? Tau. The next letter is Omicron. And the last letter is Nu. And again, look at the grave accent over the word, and we pronounce it ton. Ton. The next word before the comma begins with what letter? Theta. And the next letter is epsilon. And the next letter? Omicron. And the last letter in this word? Nu. What kind of accent is over the Omicron? An acute accent. We pronounce this word theon. Theon. Notice that the definite article in front of this word ends in an Omicron and a Nu, and that the last two letters in the word theon are also Omicron and Nu. There is a reason that they are the same. Let's pronounce those two words together. Ton, theon. Now go back to the beginning of John 1:1 and let's pronounce the words up to this point. In arche, ein, ho, logos. Now let's say the whole clause. In arche, ein, ho, logos. In arche, ein, ho, logos. Now let's look at the second clause, the first word, kai. Ho. Logos. Ein. Pros. Ton. Theon. And now let's say this clause. Kai ho logos ein pros ton theon. This time a little faster. Kai ho logos ein pros ton theon. Now let's go back again, and this time we'll say those two clauses a little faster. In arche ein ho logos. Kai ho logos ein pros ton theon.